It's the last known place that we have. And listen, we're not getting a lot of information, but it's the last information that we have that's corroborated. So we got to start somewhere.
Problem is, Gabby's last known location is vague, but we've discovered she used an app called The Dirt to find and review campsites off the beaten path during her van life adventure with Brian Laundrie. The places she pinned in Utah line up with sites we know she visited from her own social media, and the app shows her possible route through Idaho and Wyoming to Teton, where she listed 2 possible campsites. The first is along Spread Creek, east of the park. We are aware of potential sightings of Brian in this area sometime between August 26th and August 29th. The next possible campsite on Gabby's itinerary sat between Teton and Yellowstone, here on Glade Creek. To be clear, we don't know if Brian and Gabby ever made it this far, but we can say for sure it's a place Gabby wanted to pitch her tent. Today, TikTok and Twitter have been flooded with possible sightings of Brian in the Teton area, but are they legit?
All the social media, the media attention, I mean, it's really hard to deal with, but it is needed.
Police in Florida this afternoon revealed they've received over 1,000 tips in the case so far.
The vast majority of them are not helpful, but it's those nuggets, it's those little pieces in there.
Not every sighting or viral video will prove to be valid. This is why Gabby's use of the Dirt app is so important. It shows us exactly where she wanted to go. But that plan went off the rails, and Brian at some point, possibly on August 30th, started a long drive home to Florida. Was Gabby with him, or was she left behind?
There's 2,500 miles between Wyoming and Florida. So if we start now, it's less we have to do when we pinpoint a better location. That's how we look at it. Is what if we get lucky and we don't need Brian anymore? We find her, right now.
If Brian's point of departure was the Teton area, his likely route home would have taken him east on I-80. Police are hoping people who saw him or the van along that route will let them know.
Obviously, that vehicle drove a couple thousand miles to get back here to Northport. It didn't do that on 1 tank of gas.
Breaking news right now in the disappearance of 22-year-old Gabby Petito.
This is exclusive video that you're about to see of Chopper 5. You are looking right now just outside Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. Our crew spotted crime scene investigators on the ground in the Spread Creek dispersed camping area where the FBI has been searching for Gabby since yesterday.
Now, let's give you some background as to the relationship this story has right now to Salt Lake City. 22-year-old Gabby, who lives in Florida, was first reported missing by her family last Saturday on September 11th, when her boyfriend, 23-year-old Brian Laundrie, returned home to Florida without her. But getting back to that video a little bit about Grand Teton National Park, our crew spotted some crime scene investigators on the ground in the Spread Creek dispersed camping area where the FBI apparently has been searching for Gabby since yesterday.
An exclusive video coming in from Chopper 5 of something that investigators have found. We don't know exactly what has been found. We are covering this breaking news story from all angles. News specialists Garda Mejia and Morgan Wolf, who have been covering this case since the beginning, are both headed to Grand Teton National Park.
And we'll have more from them coming up on KSL News at 4 o'clock. And news specialist Matt Rascone also digging into this case, and we'll have more on what investigators may have found there in Grand Teton National Park. In that particular area, Morgan, what have you been able to learn and what can you tell us?
Yes. Hi. We are about to be hearing from FBI investigators in about a half hour. They have not been answering our questions on whether or not this body found in the park is Gabby Petito. So we do not have any clue that this is Gabby, but what we can tell you from our footage that we saw up in the air with Chopper 5 is that this is the area investigators were looking through Spread Creek. And so as you can see from the video, that there are investigators with blue gloves on. They are taking photos. They are pointing at something As Debbie mentioned, we are being very cautious with what we show at KSL TV here, but there is another video that indicated this van that they were traveling in, Petito and her boyfriend, was in this area. And we found that out, that this van was spotted on August 27th in this specific area. So it is lining up with a lot of the information that tipsters have been sharing with FBI, and it led them to this massive search effort in Spread Creek. They had people on the ground, they had people on horseback, they were doing surveys of the ground too, and so it's just quite shocking to see all of this unfold so quickly. We don't want to speculate right now, but this is the area that investigators were having that search for Gabby Petito, that Chopper 5 saw them put up this awning and start taking photos of everything that they were seeing and pointing at a specific area about 200 yards from the road. So we're just very curious to hear from investigators. Like I said, I have been making calls to the coroner's office in Teton County, Wyoming. I am here right now outside of where they're going to be having this press conference in a half hour. We have not been told if this is Gabby Petito that they found, but we do know, as CNN has confirmed, that they found a body in Teton National Park.
All right, Morgan, in regards to where you're at exactly, where are you? And then are there people starting to gather for this particular press conference, or what's the mood or the scene out there?
Well, I can say that we are inside the park. It's at a visitor center that they're going to be having this press conference. There are still people that are, enjoying the park right now that are scattered around here. I can see people with hiking boots on that look like they might have been hiking, but I'm also starting to see a lot of media crews roll in. We saw the sheriff pull up, and they are telling us that they're getting this area ready. So we were actually, I believe, some of the first people to get here, because we saw the sheriff roll in after we were already here. So this is a tricky situation, though, because this is obviously a public space. This is a public national park. They haven't closed down the park. They have closed down the Spread Creek parking area, though, in this camping area where the search was. But the park is still open. So we're going to see, I'm guessing, just a complete media frenzy as people are starting to roll in here for this press conference scheduled in a half hour.
Now, Morgan, I watched your Instagram video yesterday, and you were talking about this app that possibly gave police and investigators a better idea of exactly where to look. Tell us about that.
Yes, I have to give credit to Dave Cawley from our Cold podcast, because he was the one that really dug in and started tracking this app that Gabby was using. It's called The Dirt, and it's very popular with people that are doing this van lifestyle, because you can find campgrounds that are outside of parks that are free to camp at, and that's what Dave noticed with Gabby's public profile, that she was pinning a lot of public camping areas along this route that they had going from Colorado through southern Utah, up to Moab, and then up to the Tetons here in Wyoming. And she was leaving reviews on this app along the way, and those reviews that she was leaving matched up with locations and photos that she was putting on her Instagram. And that led us to the trail up in the Tetons. There are, I think, about 7 different campsites that she pinned in this area, and one of them was Spread Creek, where this investigation has been heavily focused, and where Chopper 5 saw investigators pointing to an area, again, taking pictures and photographing something. So this app could have possibly led police to this specific area, but there's also video evidence of a couple that they're ironically from Florida as well. And they put out this video that they took on August 27th, where, like I mentioned, you see Gabby's van. You can tell the stickers on the back, the ladder. It is the van that they were traveling in, and it's parked off to the left-hand side of the road in the Spread Creek camping area. And that video, I know, was sent to FBI. The couple actually gave KSL the right to use it as well. And so that's a really big indication that we for sure know that the van was there August 27th, but we don't know if Gabby was spotted there at that time. The couple didn't see Gabby. They only saw the van. And that also matches up with another tip that KSL TV was sent in about a spotting of this van that was parked there. This person wrote in saying that they thought it was weird because this van was there for a couple of days, according to this person that was also in the area. And that matches up exactly with what this Florida couple shows us in this video.
All right, and Morgan, you've been on this obviously almost since day one here. We just want to give people a little bit of an idea as to the background here to this case. Gabby Petito disappearing, last seen by her family. Apparently a week ago Saturday is when they reported her missing. She took off on a cross-country trip with her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie. The two of them seen right here. It was a well-documented type of a trip. She was all over social media. That's why we have so much video. That's why we have so many things. And they traveled through even Salt Lake City and Moab, and then ending up in Grand Teton National Park. And then all of a sudden, Brian Laundrie comes home and without Gabby, and there's nowhere to be found. Now Brian apparently has vanished from his house, and he is nowhere to be found, and investigators have named him a person of interest, but haven't been able to find him. So obviously this is a huge national story. Morgan, again, you've been following it here. The attention has just been enormous, and because it's been on social media, do you believe that's why the attention, again, has garnered so much from investigators here?
Oh, yes. I mean, social media has been key in this investigation. Investigators said that from day one, that thanks to Gabby's well-documented lifestyle that she had on Instagram, that they were able to really get a good footprint of this trip they were on. And then that led to more people, of course, seeing all of this information that we've been putting out on social media. I know the story has been wildly popular on TikTok. That is one of the newer social media platforms that is really used a lot by the younger generation. And so that is where some of these tips have actually come out of, is TikTok, and people posting video like they saw that couple that saw the van on August 27th. They posted that to YouTube. And so this story really has spread internationally, I would say, because of the power of social media and the power that it's held in sharing all of this information. And like I said, Cold Podcast, Dave Colley host, he was able to find that public profile that Gabby had on this app. There you go. That's another digital forensic way of tracking her. And so it's really, honestly, mind-blowing when you think of how a digital footprint can really link you and show your life. I mean, this couple was posting these videos and they were posting pictures very actively on Instagram, and that proved to be so helpful for investigators as they were trying to narrow down where Gabby was.
Now, Morgan, I know that you covered everything that was happening in Moab as well. So all of that we see on Instagram and TikTok and these types of platforms, it looked like the couple was so happy, but there was trouble, we learned, during their travels, right? Talk a little bit about what finally was uncovered in Moab a couple of weeks ago.
So this came out on Wednesday, that there was a police incident involving Laundrie and Petito on August 12th. And we got the police report. I actually have it in my backpack still with me. I went through it extensively, and it showed that they got into a fight outside of a co-op in the Main Street area of Moab, which is a very popular area where you'll find all of the visitors typically grabbing their food and whatnot. And so a lot of people claim to see this fight. Someone called 911. Actually, I have found out a few people now called 911 about this fight. Police were able to catch up with the couple outside of Arches. And it's eerie seeing and hearing their voices, and the way Gabby was uncontrollably crying, talking to police about their fight. She said that that Laundrie really stresses her out, and she has really bad anxiety and OCD that led to a fight that morning about the van being dirty. But then we have a witness that told that told the 911 dispatcher that he saw them fighting over a phone. And so that's also detailed in the police report. And so what happened there is, let me walk you through exactly what this person says they saw and what Laundrie and what Petito said. So they told police that they got into a fight. Brian tried locking Gabby out of the van and told her to calm down and take a walk. And the driver's side window was down. Gabby then tried getting in, and with the scuffle, she hit Brian in the face, I believe, with a phone or something. You see him, he has cuts on his eyebrows in this body camera video that Moab police captured. And then Brian said that he raised his voice to tell her to stop, and he pushed her away. And so that is what this witness saw. It also lines up with what Gabby and Brian both told investigators. There is a discrepancy, though. I will point this out. I watched this hour-long, 17-minute body camera video 4 different times since it happened, or since we got it on Thursday. And I can tell you that I thought it was very curious that Gabby described their morning as being full of fights, and she was very stressed. She was working on a website, and then she told police that Brian made her feel like she couldn't do it, and she wasn't able to get it done. And then Brian tells police that they had a pretty great morning outside of the Moonflower Co-op. So there is a difference between how they described their mornings, but there was a very similar tone in how they described the actual fight.
In regards to something like this happening, Morgan, obviously it's centered right there, Grand Teton National Park. Is that because that was kind of the area that she was last pinned? I mean, is that really why the search has gone there? And you've talked a little bit about, obviously, kind of what the social media that's led them to that point. But is that really why they're concentrating in this area? Because they came back, obviously, to Florida, or at least Brian came back to Florida, and without her, and there was no sign of her anywhere. And so this is where they believed she may have last been seen?
Well, we actually know that she was up here because of her mom and dad. This was the area that Gabby told them she was going to when the last time they heard her voice and spoke to her around August 24th, 25th. And so there was a text message that the mom got on August 30th. She said it was kind of weird. And now the family doesn't believe that it was Gabby that sent that text message. And so the parents really were the ones that pointed to the Tetons from the beginning. And we have to give them the credit because their family came out here before law enforcement even had a big search going through the park. They had their family out here earlier this week putting up flyers, asking people, have you seen this person? Have you seen this man? They were out here. And then we had investigators tell us that they were going to be searching the park, and we had the Park Service confirm with KSL TV that they were going to be searching the park. That followed the family's effort.
Now, Garna Mejia has also been reporting on this story, and she was one of the first that talked about this last Sunday night. She spoke with Gabby's mom, and I believe Gabby's stepdad, and I know that you've covered that as well. She's been in contact with Gabby's parents this afternoon. They have been spending time also in Wyoming. And Morgan, talk a little bit about the family. What has the family been saying? The Gabby's family has been very vocal on social media, especially when Brian vanished a couple of days ago. They made a statement saying he did not disappear or he's not missing. You know, he ran from authorities. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, most recently, we heard from the family that said, when asked about Brian's disappearance, they said, Gabby is missing, Brian is hiding. So they have been very suspicious of why Brian isn't talking with them and why he's not talking with authorities or his parents. Yesterday, we saw police go, I believe it was Friday night, we saw police go into Brian Laundrie's home where he lived with Petito, and investigators were called there by his parents. And so first it was the thought that the parents were going to talk about Gabby, but I was told by investigators they had their lawyer on the phone, and the parents, Brian Laundrie's parents, told them they were only there to talk about Brian, who they said they hadn't seen since Tuesday. So they have not been answering any questions about where Gabby Petito, their son's girlfriend that lived with them for a year, could possibly be.
Now, I know, Morgan, this case really blew up on Friday night when apparently Brian's family, for the first time, allowed the investigators to come to the home. And I think that was a revealing news that their son was no longer there. They don't know where he's at or anything like that. I know investigators at one time had said, we know exactly where Brian's at. He's a person of interest. We're following and we know where he's at. But apparently they didn't know where he was at. Is that what you kind of have learned?
That has been, I think, question on everyone's mind, Dan, is how did Brian Laundrie leave his home without any, one, police seeing him, two, his parents knowing where he was going, or three, anyone in the neighborhood spotting him, because we know eyes have been on that home because it was announced on September 11th that Gabby was a missing person. Later that night, September 11th, they found the van at the Laundrie's home in Florida. So then the following day, there was a lot of chatter about this case. It really intensified on Tuesday. And then come Wednesday was when he was named a person of interest. But from the beginning, the parents told investigators, we will not answer questions, and Brian will not be answering questions. You can funnel any request that you have through our attorney.
Oh, yeah, and I'm sure there's so much information that everyone wants, especially Gabby's family. We did just see this. You probably saw this as well, Morgan, that Northport Police, who's been conducting the search in that nature preserve in Florida, they just sent out a tweet, said the call is off for the night due to darkness. That's what happened again last night. Now, as we learned a couple of days ago, Brian's parents said that he left to go to that nature preserve, and so that's where investigators have been looking for Brian for the last couple of days. So as far as what you've covered on this over the last week or so, what have you seen as far as the shift in the efforts from investigators, not just here, but also in Florida?
Well, it was a really bizarre situation when we saw the police go into the Laundrie home, because immediately I thought in my head, oh, do they have a search warrant? Does that mean that they have evidence? But it turns out that that wasn't the case. They were called there by the Brian Laundrie's parents. And then there was this massive search effort in Florida looking for Brian, that, again, is a person of interest. The police investigators were saying this isn't a criminal case. At the time, they were saying that. And so those search efforts are focused in that nature reserve area where his parents say that he liked to camp. It's about 10 minutes from their home. So that was wild to see. But you get a jittery, nervous feeling when you hear about what our chopper saw in the search area of the Tetons National Parks. And from the busy weekend we had with that search for Brian in Florida to this, it's really taken it just to the next level of just a craziness. I mean, everything has been happening quickly but slowly at the same time. You know, we're trying to figure out this information, and we're hearing so much. There's so much buzz everywhere, but we haven't heard exactly where Gabby Petito is yet. And we're hoping that FBI investigators will give us more information in that update that's going to be happening at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, we are just 12 minutes away from a press conference here. Just to kind of recap a little bit about what we're hearing, what we're seeing, what's happening, and why we're on air at this particular hour. If you're just joining us right now, apparently a body has been found in Wyoming, right there at a campground where searchers are looking for Gabby Petito. Our Chopper 5 capturing that exclusive video. A little bit earlier today, you see a tent going up right there. You see investigators kind of surrounding the scene. And according to a photographer, it appears that he did see that body. But of course, we're not showing anything like that or any evidence that may hamper the case or anything like that. But we have been able to confirm through CNN that a body has been found. We are now just 11 minutes away from a press conference where FBI, also Grand Teton National Service workers are supposed to be there, and others to fill us in as to what's going to be happening here. Anything else developing out there as what you're seeing there, Morgan, right now? Are you noticing more people showing up?
I'm seeing our national news networks rolling in. I am still seeing actual people with hiking boots on that are in the park. This is a public place still. So, yes, we still have a lot of people that are in this national park as we are about to have this very, very large press conference.
And I want to point out that this is just a good reminder that responsible journalism does take some time. So we started seeing reports immediately that were unconfirmed, and we felt like we need to hold on until we get confirmation from a credible source, which is when we saw that CNN had confirmed with the Teton County coroner that that was, in fact, a body. No identification on that yet. We hold on to information until we feel like it's confirmed and we can responsibly report accuracy.
Yes, yes. Well, Debbie, we saw this scene from the air with Chopper 5 around noon. We were holding on to this information to do our due diligence in this process. You owe it to the public to make sure you are careful with your reporting, and you especially owe it to the family members that could be involved in this case.
Yeah, you know, this case obviously has just really touched the hearts of people all across the nation, if not world here, because I know this has just blown up on social media. Here you have a 22-year-old young gal, a 23-year-old young man who just go on what was supposed to be, it appeared, as this amazing, wonderful, great trip across country.
Yeah,
to the
hashtag
West.
van life.
Yes,
van
exactly.
Life.
We know that that's very popular right now, the whole van life scene, and especially documenting it on social media. It appeared from the videos, from the pictures, and everything, that everything was just going so wonderful and so great. And then all of a sudden we see the video coming out of Moab. We knew there was trouble there. But apparently they did travel through Salt Lake City. And Morgan, take us through the Salt Lake City connection there and then on their way to Grand Teton. What happened in Salt Lake City here that kind of brought this case to the forefront here locally?
Well, I think we can say that it really brought attention to Utah because they were spending so much time at our parks here. I mean, we saw that they went through Zion, they went through Bryce, they went through Canyonlands, Arches. They did the whole park systems. I think that one time they were even at Capitol Reef. And so they were spending a lot of time in Utah, and we know that. And then they were confirmed to be in Salt Lake City August 20th and 21st. So we know that the dad told us that he ordered them food. And at this point, we know that he ordered Gabby food. There has been speculation to whether or not Brian was there with her. I know I haven't been able to confirm reports, but I've heard from some people that Brian possibly might have left at some point. But we do know from Gabby's dad that he ordered food to her to a hotel in Salt Lake City, August 21st.
And Morgan, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but a lot of people have wondered, why did it take 10 days for her family to report her missing? I know her parents live in New York, and she lived with the Laundrie's parents and Brian in Florida. Did they not know that she was not with them? Is that why we had that 10-day lapse?
So at this time, that week, right? The last text that her mom got was August 30th. So we do know that Gabby was in contact with her mom, and then her mom lost contact with her, and she wasn't answering her calls or her texts. Her mom has told us that she tried reaching out to Brian. She's reaching out to also his parents, who, again, Gabby lived with at one time, and they were not getting back to her. And so that is what really, I mean, put yourself in the mom's shoes. If you weren't hearing from your daughter and the person that was with your daughter on this cross-country road trip isn't telling you where she is or isn't even texting you back. And so the mom immediately then, when she was figuring out that she couldn't get a hold of her daughter and Brian wasn't telling her anything, she went to police. But I think the problem that she was running into is really that it was across the country. The mom lives in New York. Dad lives in Florida. And that's a state line that you are crossing trying to report a missing person. And so finally, the parents were able to file that report with Florida investigators. And then we had New York agencies that were also involved. It's been a pretty complex to track everything through all of these state lines.
All right, Morgan Wolf joining us live from the phone there at the Grand Teton National Forest. And we're waiting a press conference that will start here in about 6 minutes here. We may learn a lot more. We're going to go ahead and bring in Matt Rascone, who's also digging into this. He joins us from our breaking news center here in our newsroom. Matt?
Yeah, guys, just been following what's been happening in Florida. So Wyoming, of course, that's where the big developments are today. But we know that day 2 of the search for Brian Laundrie over in Florida has wrapped up, and at the Wildlife Reserve not far from his home. So Laundrie showed up at his home, as we've mentioned, in Northport on September 1st after traveling for a couple of months with Gabby. He arrived with her van, but without her, as far as we know, and she was reported missing 10 days later. Since then, Brian, he's refused to talk to police. That's at the advice of his attorney. He was named as a person of interest shortly after she was declared missing. And his family wouldn't talk to police either, though, until Friday. And on Friday, that's when police arrived at their home. There was a big crowd outside. The assumption was the family was finally talking about Gabby, so there was some excitement. Instead, we learned the visit had everything to do with Brian's disappearance. And police said in a press conference, actually, the day before, that they knew where Brian was. According to his family, though, on Friday, we learned Brian was last seen Tuesday. That is when he packed a backpack and told his family he was going to an environmental park. He drove there in a Mustang. The Laundrie family apparently said they picked up that vehicle on Tuesday, so they knew where he was. They knew that he was leaving. On Saturday, investigators began searching the Carlton Reserve. That's a massive park that covers 24,000 acres. Dozens of police officers, they were joined by FBI agents, drones, canines in the search, and it was the parents that led investigators to that area and where they continue to be. Police have been trying to get information on Gabby from the Laundrie family, but because they were not and have not been investigating this as a crime, there were no search warrants, there was no detaining. They only talked to the family when they requested it, and of course, that turned out to be all about Brian. The Northport police spokesperson actually said the parents were on the phone with their attorney during that search on Friday as police were going through the home. And I think that was just to make sure that police weren't asking them anything about Gabby. And so we're still trying to figure out exactly what that means. But the search has wrapped up on day 2 over there at that reserve, that wildlife reserve, not far from his home in Northport. Guys.
Yeah, and I know, Matt, in regards to the time out there, obviously they're 2 hours ahead of us. It's 6 o'clock there right now. When it comes to the Brian Laundrie family, they were not cooperating with police they basically just kept referring to things to their attorney. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, and the attorney sent out a statement. He said, I've told them not to talk, and that's what they were doing. He even said something like, you know, in these situations, you know, when you say something, they can grab that and run with it, and you can get in trouble. And so his advice to the family, to Brian, was do not speak with police. And that's what they did. And not until Brian left on Tuesday, but then apparently by Friday, the parents were worried enough that they did call police and say, okay, yeah, we need to get them involved in this search.
Yeah, it sure is hard to understand where people are coming from just as an outsider. And, you know, we know we're going to start to see these pieces come together over the next few days. Matt, thank you so much for that. All right, 𝐭𝐨𝐼 Mejia has been in contact with Gabby's family throughout the afternoon and really for the last week or so. Joins us on the phone right now. 𝐭𝐨𝐼, what is Gabby's family saying tonight?
Hey, you guys, I think we can all understand how they're feeling at this time, and we're trying to be really respectful of that time. I have been, like I said, in contact with them, especially the family members that are here in Wyoming. So I woke up this morning to a text from them at about, I want to say it was 4 a.m. They had reached out and they said, 𝐭𝐨𝐼, we saw this video, that YouTube video. Can you please help us get the word out there? They're searching in this area. We just need help. We're asking anyone in that area with those dates to the 27th and the 30th of August, if they saw the van, if they saw Brian, if they saw Gabby, to please call into that FBI tip line. And so that's kind of how our communication started this morning. And as we know now how, all of the events have unfolded, the family members were telling me that they were asked to stay away from the search area. So they were trying to allow that to happen, and they were with law enforcement. And then, they started having that information come in, and it's just a heartbreaking situation, not what they were praying for.
We can only imagine what that family is going through right now, especially with this news. And as you mentioned, 𝐭𝐨𝐼, at this time, we don't know who that body is, or they have not identified that body, we should say. And we're waiting. A press conference is expected to start in just about 30 seconds here, so if they are on time, 4 o'clock their time there in Grand Teton National Park.
This is breaking news from KSL.
Well, you've been watching breaking news coverage this afternoon in the search for missing woman Gabby Petito.
Yeah, Chopper 5 over the area this afternoon. That a body has been identified in that particular area.
Yes, we are waiting to attend a news conference, and we want to get you right to Jackson, Wyoming, and that's where the FBI National Park Service are about to give an update on the case. Now, Chopper 5's been in that area all day. We arrived about 8 o'clock this morning. We started seeing some activity around noon, and then we got that confirmation from the Teton County coroner that they indeed did find a body, something that we believe we had spotted as well early in the day.
We have a team of reporters covering this right now for you. We have Morgan Wolf and Matt Rascone, and also Garna Mejia. She joins us live on the phone. She's out in that area. She's actually been in contact with the family. Garna, what can you tell us?
Hey guys, just as we were talking, I mean, this is the family's worst nightmare. This is what they were trying desperately to avoid. You have family members advocating in New York, where Gabby was born and raised, in Florida, where her dad lives and where she was living with Brian. And then here, they flew out here earlier this week because they told us, we just had a feeling in our guts that we needed to be here, that this is as close as we could get to Gabby at this time. And so the hope was to be able to find her. We saw throughout the week as those search efforts were starting to come to fruition. I remember, I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday that I was talking to the sheriff down at Teton County Sheriff's Office, and I said, you know, what do these search efforts look like? Are you taping off areas? And, you know, he said, no, not yet. You know, and so we knew that they were trying to figure out how to best approach the situation. I mean, this is a massive park, and they had started to focus in on that Jenny Lake area, and then we started to see that focus starting to shift towards this Spread Creek area. Now, that area is a dispersed camping ground. It's only about a 15, 20-minute drive from the main entrance to get into Grand Teton National Park. And it's something that locals tell us. It's a place that they tell us has become just really popular as people try to do this van life camping thing as, you know, the pandemic hit and people are looking for affordable options to camp out. But really, it's an area that traditionally had been known mostly to locals. And this is an area that Gabby pinned on her dirt website profile. So it's an area that they knew she was familiar with. And we were there on Friday, you guys. We were there when park rangers were starting to go up to campers and asking them if they had any information, how long they had been there, if they had spotted Gabby, the van, or Brian. And we actually ran into a hunter who said, that's funny that you guys are here asking me about this because my buddy could swear that when we went hunting, we came in hunting here on August 30th, we saw this van on the side. And that just kind of, you know, started to see all those pieces come together and that focus zeroing in on that area. And, you know, yesterday we had that confirmation. They were taping off the area. It's closed. And we have what has been discovered today.
Garna, thank you so much for your great reporting on this story. It is so upsetting, and people across the country, as you said, have been watching this. We all look at this like Gabby Petito could be our daughter. She could be our niece. She just has that all-American look. She is such a cute girl, and we all want answers in this case. Well, if you haven't been following, we want to give you just kind of an update, bring you up to date on what's been happening. So her parents reported her missing on September 11th. She had been out on the road with her boyfriend since late June. They'd made their way across the country. Ultimately, they made their way through all of the sites in southern Utah, the Big Five, made their way through Salt Lake late in the month. And then that's the last time her family actually saw her and spoke to her. They did get a text from her a few days later. They say they don't know if that actually was texted by her or somebody else, but the thought was they were heading up to Grand Teton National Park. And then Brian Laundrie apparently shows up about a week ago or so, and without Gabby, and didn't say anything. He didn't report her that she was missing or anything like that. And then it was last Saturday when the family reported that she was missing. Let's go ahead and go over to Matt for a little bit of an update there on the Brian Laundrie situation. Matt, what can you tell us from your end?
Yeah, guys, Northport Police, they said that the search has wrapped up for the evening. This is day 2 of that search at a wildlife reserve for Brian. But of course, we're just beginning to learn more about what may be happening in the search for Gabby Petito over in Wyoming. Now, we know that Northport has been kind of the center location of all this, because this is where Gabby was living with Brian and his family in Florida. And candles were lit, prayers were sent up in Northport actually last night for Gabby Petito. And there have been people that have been congregating outside of the home, of the Laundrie home. And you're seeing video of it right here. They actually got all the way up almost to the door, and someone there with a megaphone calling for justice for Gabby, asking, you know, the parents and Brian to give out information, because that's been sort of the struggle this whole week. Is Northport Police received this missing persons case on September 11th and aren't able to get anything from the only person who was with her that we know of in the months previous. And the police chief said several times, you know, 2 people went on a trip, 1 person came home, and that person is not talking to us. That Mustang that you're looking at right now, that police were going through on Friday, is the Mustang that Laundrie's parents say he drove to a wildlife reserve on Tuesday with a backpack, and then hasn't been seen since, according to his parents. And police showed up at the home on Friday at their request and started their investigation into what happened to Brian. His parents knew that he had left, and since then, all day Saturday, all day today, they were searching for Brian to see if they could find anything, and they said there is nothing new to report after day 2 of searching in that area. Guys?
So, Matt, where's the van now? Do we know?
Well, police took the van. It was either Sunday or Monday, so it was shortly after she was reported missing on Saturday. So sometime Saturday, Sunday, Monday, they recovered that van, which belongs to Gabby Petito. It actually doesn't belong to Brian. They recovered the van, and were just gathering as much evidence as they could. And so as far as we know, that van is still in the custody of police. Possibly with FBI. This is, of course, a big investigation spanning several states and several agencies. But as far as we know, because this is video from Friday that you're looking at outside the home, no sign of the van there. There was that Mustang that apparently Brian drove to the wildlife reserve, but we haven't seen the van since.
All right. Again, we're waiting a press conference to take place here. They told us 4 o'clock. But as we know many times in these kind of investigations, they may be a little bit longer. But we've been able to confirm through CNN, apparently a body has been found there, Grand Teton National Park area, just outside of there, in that exact search area where they've been looking there. And we're going to go ahead and bring in 𝐭𝐨𝐻𝐿 Mejia. She's been covering this since day 1 also. And 𝐭𝐨𝐻𝐿, you've been a chance to speak with the family. Tell us a little bit about any reaction that they may have towards the Laundrie family.
You know, we haven't heard any response in that regard. What we do know is that they have been wanting and working and desperate to keep the focus on the search for Gabby. You know, you had that statement that they put out when, you know, Northport Police announced that they now consider Brian Laundrie missing. And they said, you know, he is not missing. He was home. You know, Gabby is missing. He's on the run. And for them, you know, again, this morning when I woke up to their text messages at 4 in the morning saying, 𝐭𝐨𝐻𝐿, there's this video. We're pretty sure it's the van. Can you please help us get the word out? We need people focused on the Spread Creek area. Earlier this week, the family, when there was starting to be rumors about other potential places like Yellowstone, telling me, no, we're certain that we feel that Brian left and drove back to Florida from here, from Grand Teton National Park area. And so we've known all week long when they flew in and said, we have this gut feeling, there's something here, this is as close as we can get to Gabby. So in the last hour or so that we've been kind of texting back and forth, I think this is their time to come together as a family, to be able to process what's going on. And again, we don't have confirmation of what this means, but I think many of us suspect that this is their worst nightmare that has just come true. And so certainly our thoughts are with them.
𝐭𝐨𝐻𝐿, have you had a chance to be in contact with the parents since we started seeing these reports that there was a body found in this area?
I've been in contact with a Speed family here in Wyoming. And so that's been our contact. You know, as we know, there's 3 different groups of family members that are in Florida, New York, and here in Wyoming. So that's been my primary contact. Also, I did get a response from the Laundrie family attorney. I said, you know, is there anything that you can come into the Laundrie family with this development once CNN confirms that there was a body found, you know, following our findings of Chopper 5, and their response was simply no.
Our Chopper 5 capturing this video earlier today, exclusive video here, you're only seeing on KSL, in regards to what they kind of found and us breaking the story earlier this afternoon. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, a very emotional FBI agent talking about what they discovered and his heart and his feelings going out to Gabby Petito's family at this time.
Right. So he got up, first of all, thanked the task force that's been looking for Gabby. He also thanked the community for all of the tips. He said those have been invaluable in the search for Gabby Petito. And then he also said, hey, they still would love to see any videos, any pictures, any contact that anyone out there had with Gabby Petito or Brian Laundrie over these last several weeks. They are still looking, as this is an active investigation, on what exactly happened. He also said cause of death has not been determined yet.
And as we've been mentioning all day long here, as far as we have a team of reporters covering this breaking news situation, and we're going to head on over to Morgan Wolf, who is there at that particular press conference. I believe she's not able to join us quite yet, but let's go over to Garda Mejia, who's been talking to the family all afternoon. Apparently, she's not quite ready there either. But let's, Matt Rascone, heading over to him in the Breaking News Center. In regards to the latest news here, Matt, just the reaction here and the feelings. This is obviously the worst nightmare that for many of us that we wanted to hear, especially for the Petito family.
Right. Yeah. Devastating news here. And I've been following what's been happening in Florida. There was a vigil for Gabby Petito last night. Throughout the week, this community has really just been calling for information on Gabby and really just been following this case closely because she had been living with Brian and his family there in Northport in Florida. And so you can imagine the reaction today. I mean, they even went out to Laundrie's home and were with the megaphones and were yelling for Brian and his family to give up information. And so you know that there is going to be a lot of sadness in that community, of course, with Gabby's family. The search for Brian has wrapped up, but this is just some very difficult news. And it'll be interesting to see if this changes anything as far as the search for Brian and the investigation that Northport Police have been conducting so far, because up to this point, it was always a missing persons case, never seen as a crime, and that's why we didn't see, you know, any search warrants or anything like that. And Brian was always mentioned just as a person of interest in the case, and we will wait to see what this might change for that investigation, if anything. But at this point, Northport's also just getting this news right now, at the same time that they're hearing that there's nothing new in the search for Brian.
Thank you, Matt Rascone, reporting on that for us. Let's head over to Morgan Wolf. Morgan is at that press conference. She's been tracking this case from day one. She gave us a full overview of a lot of those key developments that have been happening over the past week, like that phone call from Gabby to her family, like that food that they ordered. And Morgan, you were just there, you were listening. Interesting and just telling of how emotional this investigation has been, as we heard from that FBI spokesperson.
Debbie, I can tell you one thing that really stood out to me is the shakiness that you heard in this FBI spokesperson's voice from the beginning. And it led to us believing that this wasn't going to be a happy ending for the Petito case. So they came up here, they gave us their information. We were told we were not allowed to ask questions, and they left, and they're in and out. And so it's just really heartbreaking news for really a lot of people to hear, but especially for Gabby's family. They have asked for the media to refrain from reaching out to them, to give them some space at this time. And so, you know, it's just very surreal to hear, knowing the video that KSL TV saw from the air with our chopper, then to trace it to what they just announced, saying that body parts being recovered were consistent with the description of Gabby Petito. Now, again, just want to point out, they are waiting on the official word from the coroner's office, but it's safe to say that this is a very heartbreaking for a lot of people to hear. Debbie?
Morgan, obviously you've been covering this since day one there. What was the mood, the reaction there as you saw that, as that announcement came? I mean, this is something that we kind of suspected possibly, just because of the way it was all being played out here, but still to hear him say that, you know, our hearts go out to the family right away, it was immediate that, oh no, here it comes.
I'm going to do pretty good at it.
Well, I can tell you, I feel like myself right now, like I'm even holding back some tears. Just because this is not what anybody wanted to hear. And, you know, hearing, like I said, the shakiness in the voice of the spokesperson that was announcing this, and knowing that there have been so many people involved trying to bring her home safely, just absolutely devastating for all of us to hear. And so really, you know, our hearts go out to the Petito family. And now we ask questions. We ask more questions. That is our job as journalists. And so we are really going to be trying to figure out what happened to this 22-year-old girl that was supposed to be having the time of her life on this road trip, driving across country in this van with her boyfriend. What went wrong, and how did it get to this place? So like I said, you know, as journalists, we hear so much information, and we have feelings too. This is difficult for a lot of us who have been following this case to really hear. And so, again, I know we're extending all of our condolences to Gabby Petito's family at this time.
Morgan Wolf live for us, covering this heartbreaking situation. Morgan, thank you for your coverage on that.
Yeah, we're going to go and get over to 𝐭𝐨𝐼 Mejia. She's also been covering this case since day one, and she's been in contact with the family even as early as earlier today. 𝐭𝐨𝐼, your reaction to this news, and obviously this family has just got to be heartbroken.
I mean, yeah, I don't know that there's words for it, you guys, right now. I think going through this week with them, roller coaster ride of, you know, first, like, what can we do? What can we do to help to get her face out there, to get support? And literally, it felt like overnight, it just exploded, and so much support across the country to help get information out about her, about the van, about Brian, and seeing if anybody had spotted them. I think it's really interesting. I don't know what the word is to note that the people that may have put all the pieces together, those final little puzzle pieces to get detectives and authorities to zero in on Grand Teton National Park, this Jackson Hole, Wyoming area, just to see that they were actually from Florida. The lady that spotted her at Jenny Lake, the van last night, just seeing all of that come together from people across the country, I think is so touching. The mom, you know, had mentioned to me that someone said, you know, she's like America's daughter. And I think it's because we can all relate to her, that being young and wanting to go on this trip across the country and see nature and experience what is America, and to have it end in this way, I just don't know that there's words for this.
𝐭𝐨𝐼, thank you so much for your continued coverage on this as well.
With the only person of interest still missing and with many questions still lingering, KSL took a legal mind back to the scene of the crime through exclusive video captured by Chopper 5 in hopes of uncovering more answers.
Yeah, News Specialist Andrew Adams live for us tonight with this new insight. Andrew, what do you know?
I mean, that is the question. What else is there to find out? Based on what we know about the case and the crime scene, we did get some interesting answers tonight.
More than 3 weeks after her body was discovered in Teton County, Wyoming, new answers finally came today over what happened to Gabby Petito.
We hereby find the cause and manner of death to be death by strangulation, and manner is homicide.
The coroner says Petito's body had been in this area for up to 4 weeks. When Chopper 5 flew over the crime scene, a photographer spotted the remains above ground, but covered, possibly by a blanket. Hiking shoes were on the ground next to the body. While KSL has elected not to make that video public, we did show it to someone who had worked numerous homicides.
Oh, dozens. Virtually every murder that I prosecuted, I went to the crime scene.
Longtime Salt Lake County prosecutor Kent Morgan came away with distinct impressions from this scene.
This is quick. This is not sitting here for 5 or 6 hours trying to figure out how to conceal a crime.
He also didn't notice any obvious signs of a struggle on the ground.
One of the things I've been seeing in this story is a history of these individuals getting into fights and that she attacked him. I don't see that here. All I see is one individual who suffered the damage and no evidence of injury created by her.
Petito's fiance, Brian Laundrie, is AWOL and considered the only person of interest in the case. Morgan says it will ultimately take forensic evidence to place Laundrie at the scene. With Petito strangled to death, he says that evidence could be any possible fingerprints or DNA left behind.
And those things I would have to review very, very carefully as a prosecutor.
Among the questions that Morgan hopes can be answered eventually by evidence on the ground, why were there no signs of conflict at the scene? Was the body moved? In which case, why was there no apparent evidence from the air of, say, something like dragging? And also, why were the hiking shoes just left out? Why weren't they buried? Why weren't they disposed of? Again, still a lot of answers still out there somewhere.